Hey everybody, my name is Mike. I'm the student pastor at Real Life, and I just want to talk to you guys today about a story in the Old Testament. It's found in Numbers chapter 13. If you want to grab your Bible and go there, I'm going to read a couple verses in there, but I just want to talk to you about life for now. Today, and in the last couple of weeks, life has been made really complicated and hard, in some ways difficult, and for all of us, we're kind of entering into new territory, and we're taking a step kind of in a place that we've never been before. And for all of us, this is a new reality that we face that none of us have ever gone through before. Well, again, there's this story in the book of Numbers, and the Israelites, they're on the edge of the promised land. And you know the history of the Israelites. Maybe they leave Egypt, they wander through the desert for about 40 days, and then they come to the edge of the promised land, this land that God has promised to give them. And Moses is there leading the people. God tells Moses to pick 12 men that are going to go and scout out the promised land and see what it's like, see what's going on. And I'm going to start reading in verse 18 about this story and what they do when they're kind of in this new territory. It says, when Moses sent them to explore Canaan, he said, "Go up through the Negev and on into the hill country. See what the land is like and whether the people who live there are strong or weak, few or many. What kind of land do they live in? Is it good or bad? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they unwalled or fortified? How is the soil? Is it fertile or poor? Are there trees in it or not? Do your best to bring back some of the fruit of the land." It was the season for the first ripe grapes. And you see all those questions. There's all kinds of questions about all kinds of things. What is the land like? Are there trees? What kind of towns do they live in? Are they walled or fortified? They've got all these questions about this potential future. They have all these concerns about what it's going to be like when they get into the promised land. And for you and me, we probably have a lot of questions too, because a lot of things have changed in the last couple of days. And so for a lot of you, you may be wondering about your job. You may be wondering about when your kids are going to go back to school, or if they're going to fall behind in school. You may be wondering because maybe a friend of yours lost their job. You may be worried about your health. You may be worried about your family or your friend's health. You may be worried about a vacation that you planned months ago that you have coming up for spring break. You may be worried about a lot of things. You may be worried about your senior who's about to go to college and if they're going to get to college or if they're going to have the chance to go to college. There's all kinds of questions, and there's questions about things that you don't even know you should be asking about. And it's the same for the Israelites. They had all these questions about this new reality that they were going to walk into. So again, we're kind of in the same place, that we have a lot of questions about what's going to come up in the next few days, next few weeks, the next few months. Well, the story goes on in verses 21 through 25. It says, "So they went up and explored the land from the desert of Zin as far as Rehob." And there's a lot of names in here that I don't know how to pronounce, so I'm just going to skip over them. Well, I'll pronounce them as best I can. "Towards Labo Hamath, they went up through the valley, through Negev, and came to Hebron, where Ahiman, Sheshai, and Talmai, the descendants of Anak, lived. Hebron had been built 7 years before Zoan in Egypt." Now underline this verse. This is a really important verse. This is verse 23. "When they reached the valley of Eshcol, they cut off a branch bearing a single cluster of grapes. 2 of them carried it on a pole between them, along with some pomegranates and figs." So this cluster of grapes is so big that 2 of them have to put it on a pole just so they can carry it. That place was called the Valley of Eshcol because of the cluster of grapes the Israelites cut off there. At the end of 40 days, they returned from exploring the land. They came back to Moses and Aaron and the whole Israelite community at Kadesh in the desert of Paran. There they reported to them and to the whole assembly and showed them the fruit of the land. They gave Moses this account. "We went into the land which you sent us, and it does flow with milk and honey. Here is its fruit." And this is the good news. Like, this land that is flowing, that God gave us, it is exactly as he described it. It is flowing with milk and honey, and look at these grapes. And you got to imagine, like, if this cluster of grapes, it takes 2 people to carry it on a pole. I mean, these grapes are probably like as big as bowling balls. They're huge. They're huge. "But the people who live there are powerful, and the cities are fortified and very large." They have the answers to all their questions. "We even saw descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites live in the Negev. The Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites live in the hill country. And the Canaanites live near the sea and along the Jordan." So this is kind of bad news. "But then Caleb silenced the people before Moses and said, 'We should go up and take possession of the land, for we can certainly do it.' But the men who had gone up with him said, 'We can't attack these people. They are stronger than we are.' And they spread among the Israelites a bad report about the land that they explored. They said, the land we explored devours those living in it. All the people we saw there are of great size. We saw the Nephilim there. The descendants of Anak come from the Nephilim. We seemed like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and we looked the same to them. And so there's two spies, Caleb and this guy named Joshua, that you're probably familiar with, that come back with this good report. And there's 10 other spies that realize it's going to be hard, and it's going to be difficult, and there will be complications, and it's going to be hard if we go and conquer this land. And I don't want to kid you. In the next couple months, weeks, may be hard. It may be difficult. It may already be hard for you right now because you got kids that are supposed to be at school at home. But Joshua and Caleb, they come back with a different report. And this is an incredible verse because here they are, and they've got this pole of fruit between them. And there's these 10 guys that are like, we shouldn't do it. We should not do it. And Joshua and Caleb are eating these giant grapes, and they're like, we got to do it. We got to do it. Because here's the thing. There's fruit in there. There's fruit in there. Y'all, there's fruit in there. And there's two different groups of people that kind of see the same situation in two completely different ways. There's these 10 spies that see this situation as really hard and really difficult, something that we shouldn't take on. And as they stood there and remembered what they saw and knew the complications and the difficulties that they were going to have to overcome, they decided that they were going to give up. And they decided it was too much. And they decided that they were going to choose to be hopeless. And they decided that the odds were against them. They decided that the walls were too big. And they decided that the challenges were too great and decided to turn around. But Joshua and Caleb, they realized, no. We have an opportunity here. We have an opportunity to trust God. We have an opportunity to trust our Heavenly Father who has sent us on this mission, who has asked us, who has invited us into something, that's going to be hard. That's going to be difficult, but we can do. Look at the fruit. Y'all, there's fruit in there. There's fruit in there. But nevertheless, the rest of the Israelites, they kind of go with the 10 other spies. They believe the bad report. They believe that it's going to be too hard, that it's going to be too difficult, that they're not going to be able to overcome the challenges and the obstacles. God says, okay, you didn't want to trust me. For 40 years, you're going to go right back from where you came from. And you're going to wander around in the desert. And all of you are going to die. And so that's exactly what happens. Is that for 40 years, the Israelites turn right back around. They are on the cusp of the promised land. And they turn back around and they wander through the desert. And all the adults pass away. And that generation that disbelieved, that generation that believed that God was not enough, they all pass away. 40 years later, this new generation has risen up. And they go and stand again on the cusp of the promised land, where God has led them. Everybody has passed away, including Moses, including Aaron. The only two left are Joshua and Caleb. And 40 years later, Joshua remembers exactly what happened 40 years ago. 40 years ago. He remembered how scared the people were. He remembers how frightened they were. He remembers what happened. That they spent all that wasted time wandering in the desert when there was fruit in the promised land. Now Joshua is the leader of the Israelites. Moses is gone and Joshua's the new leader. And Joshua has something else to say to his people. He says to them, Joshua 1:9. He says, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And so in the coming days, no matter how hard it gets, no matter how difficult it becomes, no matter the obstacles that we face, no matter what comes against us, no matter how high the odds are stacked against us, God is always with us. And no matter what happens, we can be reminded and comforted in that God is always with us. So we don't have to give in to fear. We don't have to give in to being scared. We don't have to be afraid. We don't have to be anxious because we know that God is with us, that God is on our side. And in the ultimate act of love, God sent his son, Jesus, to do something in the world and for the world. And so we can trust that God is for us and with us. Real life, I want to challenge you, encourage you today to not be afraid, to not be discouraged, but to be encouraged because God is on our side.